Hi, this is Seema Arora, and this is a podcast on sustainability, climate, business, economy, and tech. So, the subject for today's podcast is: Are we in an AI bubble? AI is a very transformational technology, a most revolutionary technology, and that it is going to create values in the trillions of dollars for all the companies that use it and use it smartly. So, for example, Walmart will reap huge gains as a result of AI in its operations. Similarly, companies will capture immense values as they develop the cure for cancer and other diseases, and that these gains will accrue to the pharma companies. Companies that develop new approaches to manufacturing critical minerals and use it in electronic vehicles or EVs will actually capitalize that value and make it their own as they use AI for their operations. But what is not clear at all is how OpenAI is going to capture $1 trillion worth valuation in the next coming years. Currently, it's valued at about 500 billion. And Sam Altman is making a number of partnership deals that somehow enable it to capture $1 trillion. Now, his strategy is very simple. He wants to capture value creation at every level within the AI value chain. So recently, he's entered into three partnerships with chip makers, with NVIDIA, with AMD, and the most recent one, which is the one that I will address, the Broadcom partnership, where OpenAI wants to design their own chips. Now, this is a big leap of faith for OpenAI, which, even though it has the most sophisticated LLM model and has developed various versions, for it to now kind of leapfrog into the development of chips seems to be a very long play. And clearly, Sam Altman is following the playbook of Steve Jobs. And if we go back to the history of how Steve Jobs did it, we can draw some lessons. So, Steve Jobs kind of relied on PC chips and processor units initially for Apple products, and then kind of felt the need because IBM was not responsive to the demand, then transitioned to using Intel chips. And when he approached Intel, did not, again, so this is all economics, right? Intel did not think that the demand for iPhone would be as much as it turned out to be, and B, their estimate of the costs of making those chips was an overestimate by, uh, several factors. And so they lost the deal with Steve Jobs, who then around 2007 made the strategy that he would have chips for AI, for products in the Apple family, and that these would be manufactured in house. And so that process was started around 2007. And earlier, they used some the ARM architecture and Samsung chips, but slowly transitioned to using their own chips. And that was first used in iPhone 4 and iPad first. Now, that strategy of making chips that were geared for performance of Apple products that were energy efficient, that strategy has, even till 2023, uh, those chips, it has taken that long for Apple to design those chips. And so the M1 chip, and the M1 chip was first released in October of 2020. uh, Again, let's go back. So, started in 2007, the whole process, and executing a vision, executing a team, and making everything, all the components possible that then led to Apple manufacturing those chips in house. The M2 chips were first released in 2023. So from 2007 to 2023, it has taken Apple that long to go in with the strategy of making its own chips that are designed for Apple products and Apple performance and Apple scalability. Now imagine that, and this was with a very well run company that has been hugely successful, that has had cash for several years, and also the execution. Now, in the interim, of course, Steve Jobs died, but he had recruited a loyalist. Basically, Tim Cook has executed the vision of innovation of the chip being manufactured by Apple as his prime goal. So, despite Steve Jobs having gone, we had continuity of that leadership from Tim Cook, and that strategy has been executed as of 2023. That's how long took for Apple to make its own chips. And now we have that same vision by Sam Altman, who wants to have this whole ARM architecture and then make the chips and make them, for inference and partly in cloud, partly on the local devices. That whole strategy, I mean, how long will that take to execute? There has to be a team in place, and already, different companies are aligning with the same ARM architecture. And how soon can OpenAI get to there? It will need some cash and it will need paying customers. Now, as the calculation stands right now for OpenAI to get to the $1 trillion valuation, it should have paying customers. Even if it relies on the strategy of charging more for enterprise customers, that strategy seems to be very far fetched in terms of the cash that OpenAI will have. Of course, it's undertaking all these circular deals with AMD and NVIDIA, but it has a long way to go. And this reminds me of another story that is very technology based, and IBM was looking for an operating system. Bill Gates came in with the offer of, you know, DOS that was going to fit IBM's needs at the time. And he brokered a deal in which Microsoft could sell a version of their operating system to IBM clones while working on a better operating system, so the likes of MS-DOS 2 for IBM. And IBM kept giving money to Bill Gates to continue to do that. Bill Gates, on the other hand, was selling the Microsoft Windows version to the cloned PCs, and soon he was overtaking the sales in that department. And IBM soon realized that they were really not getting any refined version of DOS, and that Bill Gates was making his own operating system, Windows, for the Microsoft. So we can imagine a similar story playing out here. In this case, and while there's no real Bill Gates on the side of Broadcom, but Broadcom, being a hardware company, will require upfront cash for it to kind of develop the chips, manufacture the chips, and there will be several iterations. And so it will require that cash upfront. Will Sam Altman have it to give it to them? Maybe Sam Altman gives them a few billion one year and then maybe the next year, but that this can take the exact same shape where Broadcom can continue to develop, and it's a good deal for them if Sam Altman finances that. But of course, we know that at the back of all this is a calculation that Sam is making, is that he can capitalize on the value creation of ChatGPT for his own company. And that is a stretch. That is a real stretch. AI will create valuations for companies in different areas and do it by trillions of dollars. it just is very hard to imagine that it can be capitalized by OpenAI. I think it's important to delve into some of the history that has been playing out in technology companies in Silicon Valley to see where this all is going and how likely is this going to be. So, until next time, this is Seema Arora signing off for now.